Hey all, it is I, Anthony the Canadian Guy, and welcome to Wrestlesode, the solution to your wrestling information problems. If you want to support Wrestlesode, remember to hit that like button and subscribe on whatever podcast app you're listening to this on. It also helps out the show immensely if you left us a 5-star rating or review, or just told a friend. You can also check out our social medias. We are on Twitter at Wrestlesode, or on Facebook.com/Wrestlesode, or we're at Wrestlesode on Instagram. You can also check out our website at Wrestlesode.com, and soon we are going to be on YouTube as well. We have a page. We're setting it up right now, and soon these podcasts will also be on YouTube. And then soon we'll be adding video and cool other videos that I'll be doing as well. I have a cool green screen and some lights, and I have a spot here in my office all set up, but, slowly progressing. We just make sure we have good content and we're consistent, and then we slowly add, and this turns into a really awesome podcast and a series of wrestling videos that I could make for everybody. That's going to be a lot of fun, a lot of cool ideas I want to do, and I'm not new to make YouTube videos either, so this should be pretty cool. So remember to hit that subscribe button and like if you haven't. Today, I'm going to be talking about my 3 favorite storylines going on in wrestling. And just to make sure that I'm not showing any favoritism or anything like that, I've decided to take one storyline from the main roster, one storyline from AEW, and one storyline from NXT. But it also just so happens that this was the order, and these were my top 3 storylines anyway. So regardless of the fact that they came from 3 different promotions, these are the 3 best storylines, in my opinion, going on in wrestling that I'm following mostly. So in no particular order, because they're all great storylines, but I'll start with this one because it's been going on since April. And I'm scared to see how it's going to be going moving forward, but I have faith, and we will start with the Firefly Funhouse and The Fiend. So on April 8th, 2019, we got this strange vignette that aired of a cardboard box, and it was sitting in front of this black background with smoke coming through it, and there was this creepy music playing, and the camera zooms in on this box, and it just kind of bursts open. And we see Mercy the Buzzard there, and he starts laughing. And it's not the normal voice that we know for Mercy the Buzzard. It was just a modified Bray's voice, and then it starts coughing, and then it just cuts out. And that was it. That was all we got. And everybody was confused. We're like, what is this? It was a puppet. People were able to recognize Bray Wyatt's voice with the laughter, so they're thinking, okay, well, something with Bray Wyatt and puppets. And then 1 week later, on April 15th, 2019, we had the debut of Abby the Witch, which makes her debut in a vignette. There's like a dollhouse, and the lights are like blinking on and off, and the camera pans around the dollhouse to this rocking horse. And then there's like a pile of dolls on the ground. And then finally there's a rocking chair, and Abby the Witch is sitting in the chair, and the chair is swinging, and then suddenly stops. And then it just begins laughing, which is another modified Bray's like laughter. And once again, it's not the same Abby the Witch voice that we've come to know and love. So we've had 2 weeks of this now, and people could only guess like what was going to be happening with this. And I had actually heard correct theories. In fact, I even came up with the fact, I'm like, it's got to be some sort of kids show, right? Like evil kid show with Bray. So on April 22nd, after 2 weeks of build and people just going like, what the heck is this? Is this Bray's return? And with a lot of really big anticipation and hype behind it, we get the Firefly Funhouse. So instead of these weird, like dark, creepy vignettes with these like weird laughters and coughing and stuff, we get the video that comes up, it's like, we're really glad that you're our friend, and this is a friendship that will never ever end. And the show opened up, and it showed 3 different characters. It introduced Mercy the Buzzard and Abby the Witch. Ramblin' the Rabbit hadn't been seen until the 2nd episode, but you get to see him in kind of like the little intro video package, and he was the the topic of much discussion that week because we saw him in the intro video, but we did not see him in the actual video. So it starts with Bray entering into the funhouse. There's children applause. He was asking the kids, hey, did you miss me? And he said that, I knew that we would all be together again. He saw it in his dreams. And then he introduces the Firefly Funhouse as being a safe and special place. The screen kind of goes like kind of weird and stuff. And then his glove showing the words hurt and heal. And then he says, oh, and let me introduce you to, and then he introduces Mercy the Buzzard and Abby the Witch. And then then he kind of talks for a second. He's like, I used to be a pretty bad person, but all that part of him is dead now. He pulls out this chainsaw, and there's like a chainsaw cardboard, or there's like this cardboard cutout of him as old Bray Wyatt there. And he talks about how, he keeps a little piece of him as a memory, and he turns on this like chainsaw, and he puts his hand to his ears if he's like receiving a message or something, and he like chainsaws his way through himself. And then he just sits there laughing and saying, see you next week. And he just says, I'll always light the way as long as you let me in. And I'm like, okay, this was cool. It was clearly really dark and demented. And if anybody watches any of those online, kind of like creepy kids, like YouTube shows, like Don't Touch Me, I'm Scared, or just anything of that type of nature, like where things just get officially creepier and creepier as things go on. If anybody has seen Too Many Cooks, and if you haven't seen Too Many Cooks, you don't have to watch it. That's just an example of something that is pretty interesting and weird. Now, we don't have to go through every single week, but weeks of vignettes followed where we were introduced to additional characters such as Ramblin' Rabbit, Huskus the Pig, and even Devil Vince. Each week, the show got a little bit more creepy. In week 2, we had Bray painting a photo or a painting of the Wyatt compound burning down with Abby the Witch in front of the window, to Mercy the Buzzard eating and killing Rambling Rabbit, and Bray hitting Rambling Rabbit with like a mallet and having guts explode. And it was really creepy, but it just kept getting a little bit more creepy and more creepy. And then on May 13th, on the 4th episode, we are finally introduced to the Fiend. We have Bray Wyatt talking about how he has a secret, and he was asking if everybody wants to see his secret. And the funhouse turns really dark, and like in these carnival barker pants and a leather jacket, and his blonde braids loosen off to his side with a black t-shirt and like this cool, evil, awesome clown mask, which was made by Tom Savini and his team. Like, I remember feeling like incredibly giddy, like when I saw this for the first time. I was telling my friends, I was showing anybody who would watch, even if they didn't care at all about wrestling. I didn't care. I was just like, you got to see this. This is the coolest thing ever. This is unlike anything I had ever seen in wrestling at this point, and I was really into it. And I thought it was really, really well done. On July 15th, 2019, after Finn Balor lost a match to Samoa Joe, the house lights dimmed, and like the whole arena went dark, and that sound of like the like just electronics being shut down and all that kind of stuff until the lights came off. And then the lights turn on for the very first time. And inside the ring, holding Finn Balor in a Sister Abigail position, was the Fiend. This was the first time he had ever appeared in the ring. And he hits Finn Balor with a Sister Abigail. And then he stands tall before the lights drop out. And the crowd is just going insane because this is the first time the Fiend has ever attacked anybody inside the ring, which led to a series of attacks by the Fiend, which include, and are not limited to, of course, Mick Foley, and this was the second person who has ever attacked, which was on July 22nd, 2019. And this is when he used Mick Foley's mandible claw on Mick Foley, and then also, in a sense, adapted the mandible claw as his own finisher, which he's been using to take out the likes of, and I'll continue the list, Kurt Angle, Jerry the King Lawler, Seth Rollins, Kane, Braun Strowman, like some really big names. So the Fiend got his first official match at SummerSlam against Finn Balor, which was on August 11th, 2019, after 4 months of build. So like they had been building the Firefly Funhouse, the Fiend, Bray Wyatt's return, everything for 4 months. The match was essentially mostly a squash match where Bray not only won, or I should say the Finn not only won, but he like snapped like Finn Balor's neck in the match, and he applied the mandible claw, and the ref called the match. Instead of Finn actually having to tap out, it was more like he just kind of passed out. And that was his first win. And then we recently saw Bray Wyatt. He went into a feud with Seth Rollins, his first match, or second match ever, which was the Hell in a Cell match. And we all remember what happened with that match. Now, I wasn't necessarily the biggest fan of that, but the Fiend in it in himself was made and booked like a monster. You couldn't pin him. It didn't matter how many stomps you hit the Fiend with. Seth just could not pin the Fiend. So a lot of people saying, oh, well, maybe this buried the Fiend and all this kind of stuff. I still have faith in Bray Wyatt to say that won't be the case. Now, recently he reattacked Seth Rollins on the draft on October 11th, the first day of the draft, on SmackDown Live, where he came through the ring and attacked Seth Rollins and then kind of descended again below the ring. Seth was slated to be a part of Team Hogan and the leader of Team Hogan, but then he got pulled back out because he's going to have a feud against, or a second match against Bray Wyatt, who was then drafted to SmackDown, and Seth Rollins burnt down the Wyatt compound, but Seth is still on Raw and The Fiend is on SmackDown, so I don't see The Fiend winning the Universal Championship unless they're going to be swapping the championship titles around. I doubt it personally, but this will be taking place in Saudi Arabia, so we'll have to see what ends up happening in this. But up until this point, The Fiend and Bray Wyatt have put on such incredible storylines, and I could literally sit here and talk about The Fiend and Bray Wyatt's just brilliant mind all day, because this man has easily reinvented himself on 2 separate occasions. We saw him originally enter into the WWE as Husky Harris, which is where the name Huskus the Pig came from. And if those of you who don't understand, Mercy the Buzzard came from the name Waylon Mercy, which was the name of a cult leader back in like the early 90s, late 80s, WWF, who told Bray Wyatt to try out the gimmick, and that was kind of the inspiration behind the Bray Wyatt character. So his name was Waylon Mercy. And then Abby the Witch obviously is named from Sister Abigail. And Demon Vince is obviously Vince McMahon. And we got to see some amazing stuff with this, from like the Muscle Man dance, which I thought was incredibly hilarious, to just the coolest attacks inside the ring. And they book The Fiend so strong. And even though this is main roster WWE, and they really did annoy me with what they did at Hell in a Cell, and I don't necessarily know how The Fiend is going to be being used moving forward, especially if they have officially killed off the Firefly Funhouse, because that means, we don't get Mercy the Buzzard, we don't get Abby the Witch, we don't get Ramblin' Rabbit anymore. Oh, that makes me sad because I love Ramblin' Rabbit. Ramblin' Rabbit is so cool. But either way, anyway, regardless of any of those things, we have to say that The Fiend in the Firefly Funhouse has been one of the coolest things in wrestling. It's been one of the most original things in wrestling that I have seen in a long time. And when it first came out, I was so excited. Like I said, I was just telling all of my friends. I was sharing the link in the video to anybody who would watch it. Like, I was just I'd be like, hey, do you watch wrestling? Have you ever watched wrestling? Watch this. This is so cool. I was so excited to share The Fiend in the Firefly Funhouse. And you know what? I think letting Bray do what Bray needed to do to get the character to the position where he was challenging Seth Rollins for the WWE Universal Championship was great. I hope they do not bury him like they did Bray Wyatt, because Bray Wyatt in himself was such a cool character. I miss the Wyatt family as well. But we got The Fiend now, and The Fiend is an incredible character, and it's such a good evolution of what Bray Wyatt was to be in the New Day. There is so many clowns going on right now, from Pennywise to the Joker to The Fiend. The clowns are ruling 2019, so that's really cool. Anyways, we'll move on to the very next one. So I'm going to be moving on to what's going on in NXT. So the Undisputed Era fulfills the prophecy and captures all the gold except the Women's Championship in NXT. So the Undisputed Era, which is made up of Adam Cole, Bebe, Roderick Strong, Kyle O'Reilly, and Bobby Fish. Now, they're one of the most dominant factions in all of wrestling today. And it's, if not the most dominant faction, in fact, you have an incredibly strong argument if you want to say that they're the most strong faction in all of wrestling today, because they're literally all wearing championship belts. So I guess in that regard, they probably are the most over and strongest factions in NXT, or not just in NXT, clearly in NXT, but in all of wrestling. So first off, let's just kind of get into it. As your NXT championship, winning the belt from Johnny Gargano at NXT TakeOver 25, we have Adam Cole Bebe. Now, Adam Cole is one hell of a wrestler. This guy is so comfortable on the mic, and ever since he debuted in NXT, he has proven himself to be, a dominant force. And even now, as the NXT champion, everybody loves Adam Cole. If he does his boom, or if he does his Adam Cole Bebe, everybody in the crowd is doing it with him. People will chant for him, people will chant against him, but everybody loves and absolutely respects Adam Cole. He is your leader of the Undisputed Era. Next, as your tag team champions, currently we have Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly. Now, they've collectively won the tag team titles for the third time on August 28th, 2019, beating the Street Profits. Though technically, this is only Bobby Fish's second title win, because he was injured at the time of winning the second title. It was Kyle O'Reilly's third win. so that officially makes Kyle O'Reilly the most prolific tag team wrestler in all of NXT history. Because you can look at some of the championships, or some of the previous tag champions of the past, DIY, the Revival being the first ever 2-time NXT champions. But Kyle O'Reilly and the Undisputed Era are the first ever 3-time tag team champions. But specifically, Kyle O'Reilly was the part of every single